Hello friends, and welcome to my Flosstube and Variety Show number 11. I'm Emily Williams, and I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I'm glad you've chosen to join me this afternoon. So because this is Flosstube, you can expect to see my cross-stitching, and because this is a variety show, you can expect something else. And I'll tell you that today I'm going to tell you a little bit about my participation in the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, so you can just stay tuned for a few minutes before I get to that. But cross stitch first. I usually start with a temperature tree, which is patterned by StitchinMommy. You can get it on Etsy. The idea is that each leaf on the tree is a particular color that's chosen according to a temperature range. And I am caught up through the day before yesterday, I think, in August. And the top of the tree is July, and then I've just started the August branch, and I finished stitching the September branch. So I'll be ready to move right into that. I actually also started working a little bit on the October branch, but I didn't get very far. But you can see in August that there's some of the orange colors, which we had some pretty cool days. This is a pretty uncharacteristic July and August. We haven't had any days hotter than 95. We've had one or two days that were 95, but nothing hotter than that. And it's pretty normal for us to have a day in the upper 90s, even 100 once or twice a summer. So this is a little unusual, but it's still moving right along. I got sort of on a roll on the branches. I'm thinking of going ahead and finishing October, November, and December branches, and then I have only leaves to do. So I don't know, I might get inspired to do that. The tree shape is just beautiful. I really like how it's turning out. So temperature tree by StitchinMommy. Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather. This is a full coverage piece, if you've watched my videos before, you know. It's a painting by a 19th century romantic painter, and I have made a lot of progress. Again, it's all gray, it's hard to see, but I actually moved up and started working on the sky around the head of that woman that's up here. And I'm about to work on her head. It's extremely heavy in confetti up there. I mean, the whole thing is pretty heavy in confetti, but her head especially. And a lot of blended threads that I haven't assembled yet. So last night, while I was finishing watching the Olympics that were broadcast last night, I pulled out the individual threads that are used there that go into the blends, and I'm gonna assemble all the blends and then get going. But I'm so impressed with how the cross stitch is showing up the dimension of this marble area. So it's interesting. I can't say it's fun to work on, but it's satisfying to work on. Last weekend was the Blackbird Designs weekend stitch along weekend, the first weekend of every month, which I understand some people think this is the first weekend of the month, but I did it last week, and I'm working on this piece, Salute to Abigail. And if you watch previous videos, you know that and it's in this book, by the way, Sweet Land of Liberty. A lot of nice projects in here. I might do something else in the future. I said that I wanted to make the border structure, the structure part of the border finished, and start the big pot of flowers, which I did. And I just love that little vase or urn. I think that's just great. I love the shape of it and how the colors work. So that's been fun. That was fun to stitch. I have been only pulling this out on the weekend, on the Blackberry weekend, but I'm really tempted to pull it out another time. So we'll see. But anyway, I'm happy with that. And I'm happy, especially happy, that the border meets properly, which means I didn't miscount it. Now, if you've been watching, you know that I have been dithering about whether I'm going to start more projects, because I have 2 more projects that I didn't show you today because I haven't worked on them. And I decided that I was going to reward myself for getting caught up on the temperature tree by starting Flea Market Flowers by Lori Holt, which I did. I started it. I did start it. And I think I'm pleased with what I am choosing to do. Pretty much, I'm using the called for colors, and I got some white Aida, 16 count Aida, and I'm starting on the borders, because I think if I get all the borders in place, then it'll be an easy matter to count where the flower parts go. Now you'll notice that this is all wrinkled, and it's wrinkled, can you hear that? Because it's a very, 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 very stiff. I got it from a local big box store. And I know that it will soften up once once the piece is done and I wash it. It'll be fine, and it will iron, it'll press out and be perfectly smooth. I know that, but in the meantime, I have to deal with how stiff it is. So what I do from time to time is I actually sort of wad it up, because I think that creasing it and uncreasing it will soften it up. So every now and then that's what I do. But in the meantime, it's pretty wrinkled. But that's, I mean, I suppose that I could give up on this fabric, but I do think it's going to be fine. So that's what I've been working on. That is what I've been working on cross stitch. It is traditional in these Flosstube videos for people to show things they've bought, and it's dangerous from that standpoint to watch a lot of them, because people buy things, they mention shop names and online vendor names and sources of cool patterns, and suddenly I think I have to buy things, which I console myself with the fact that the hobby of cross-stitching has a companion hobby, which is the acquiring of cross-stitch stuff. So that's what I just say I have 2 hobbies. And thankfully, I've not gotten deeply into the cross-stitch stuff part. But with the recent tribute videos to Barb Adams of Blackboard Designs after her untimely death a month or so ago, I decided I wanted to buy some more Blackbird patterns. So I bought a few things. I'm going to show you because I think they're pretty. So this is some little stockings. And by little, I mean 6 inches, that I think are really cute, and I think I'm going to stitch them. And this Sweet Summer Come Again, a little pin cushion and pin drum. Here's another picture. I really like the strawberry design. I like that basket. And this is, the called for floss is Weeks Dye Works, that is to say over-dyed floss that has some variegation in it, which I don't have any of that. I don't have a local needlework shop where I can go and actually look at it and see what it looks like. So I see it on YouTube because other stitchers are so kind as to show it. And also it's stitched on linen, not on Aida, in other words. Well, I'm stitching other things on Aida that are called for to be stitched on something else, but one of the reasons I like these patterns, in addition to the designs of the cross stitch itself, is the instructions for finishing into the little drum or the little tube-ish thing are included. So that's nice to have some directions for how to do that, because one can use those structures for other things. And I got this book of Blackboard Designs, yeah, because I'm a little crazy. I like this quite a lot. I might do that one. And because, you know, collecting things is part of it. And then this is Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day. And the Blackbird, they base their designs on antique samplers, but they don't copy them. They are not reproducers usually. But I like this, so I might do that. But part of the reason I bought these is because I feel as if they are going to hold their value. And so even if I don't stitch them, somebody will be interested in them in the future. And I don't necessarily mean even their monetary value, but I think they are classics. They have a classic appeal to them in terms of their design. And so even if I don't stitch them in a few years or when they're part of my estate, somebody will want them. They won't just be trash. So that's something that I thought. And I had to get some fabric. Now, something that you probably notice is that I stitch on very bland colors of fabric. Part of that is because I don't have a local shop to see what else there is, and part of it is because I like white and cream and those colors. But I thought I should branch out a little. So here's what I did. I'm sorry, I should probably take this out of the package. So let me just do that. This is called Ballet Slippers. It's 36 count. This is actual linen. It's by Fox and Rabbit, which are actually, they are located in Australia, and they have a YouTube channel, which is nice. They do design, cross-stitch design, sampler, and other things, as well as linens, dyeing linens. But anyway, that's the first sizable piece of linen that I have gotten, because I'm a little afraid of linen because it's not really super even. So I'm not afraid of Lugana, and this is 28 count, kind of a dark greenish color. I think this is Dunes. And it has quite a bit of variance in it. And I have some sampler type patterns that I think would look good on this color, this particular fabric. So I'll do that. And then I got this other one, which is called Parchment. Again, it's 28 count Lugana that's been dyed. And it has some variation in it. This side has even more. So again, it's an experiment for me. Don't hold your breath about seeing projects on that soon, because I have 6 projects going and we've already discussed that that's enough. But I just wanted to show you that I'm branching out. I wonder what you think. What do you think? Are you an Aida, a white or ivory Aida stitcher, the way I pretty much am, or do you branch out into other fabrics? One thing I do like about Aida, it's easy to see where you're supposed to put the needle. But anyway, so that's what I've been working on. My plans are to continue with that. I really hope to get the Talavera out, the August 1st release. The next block was released. It's really, I think, a nice one, and I have ideas about how I want to put the colors in, so maybe next time you'll see that. But the Olympics. The Olympics have taken a lot of my attention these past 2 weeks because I love the Olympics. And I like sports. I like the fact that the Olympics show sports that are not readily seen on television. For instance, one afternoon, my husband and I thought, well, let's watch a little Olympics and let's watch something unusual. And so we spent a little time watching archery, and we watched some shooting, a shooting event, and we watched women's rugby. I mean, just fascinating. Women's rugby, since we don't know anything about the actual rules of rugby, and you're sort of trying to figure out what are the rules while you're watching it played, it was really interesting. A lot of running. It's sort of like ultimate frisbee combined with soccer, but you use your hands instead of your feet. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, pretty interesting. But of course, the big sports are always interesting: swimming, diving, track and field, cycling. I like the velodrome cycling. That's something you don't see on television much. And equestrian, especially. Love that. Just love the horse events. But what I really want to talk to you about is the Olympics that I was in. I was in the 1980 Lake Placid Olympics. I should say I participated in them. And if you know me in real life, you will think to yourself, really? Is that so? Because I don't look like an athlete. And I am not an athlete. I was not an athlete. But I was a student at Crane School of Music at State University of New York at Potsdam in 1980. I graduated actually then, and the Olympics were in Lake Placid, which is 70 miles from Crane. And as soon as Lake Placid was awarded the Olympics, the Winter Olympics of 1980, the leaders of Crane School of Music started talking to the Lake Placid Organizing Committee about the Crane School of Music providing all of the ceremonial music for the Olympics in Lake Placid. And so that's what we were doing. It was amazing. So I had already loved the Olympics. My mother and I watched the Olympics all along. I've always, whenever it was on television up till that point, which, you know, televised Olympics came into its own around then. Maybe the previous one, there was a lot of Olympics, but there was some Olympics even in the 60s on television. And we always loved it as a family. My mother and I especially loved it. So the fact that Crane School of Music, where I was a music student, was going to provide the ceremonial music was amazing. So I was a bassoon major, which at some other point I'll tell you why I was a bassoon major. It was a strategic decision, but anyway, I was a bassoon major player, and I played in, I believe there were 3 bands that were assembled of our band students, and each band went every 3rd day. We rotated and went, and in that particular Olympics, the medals were awarded at the end of the day of each day. So there was a medal ceremony on Lake Placid, which was frozen solid, believe me, at the end of each day. And so every medal that had been awarded that day, those athletes would come to Lake Placid for the medal ceremony that night. And the band came from Crane. So leading up to this, we had several rehearsals where we learned all the national anthems, which there weren't as many countries performing in or participating in the Winter Olympics back then as there are now. And there are fewer countries that do Winter Olympics than summer every year. But nonetheless, we had about 70 or maybe more national anthems to learn. Most of them were, frankly, God Save the Queen in one form or another. Not really, but there are several countries that is their national anthem. And, but there were, we had the chance to learn all the national anthems. And I'll tell you that at the time, I thought that O Canada was one of the most beautiful ones. And there were a couple others. I think France's national anthem was one we liked to play. And of course, the Star Spangled Banner, we hoped we would play a lot. And we also, all of the Crane School had the opportunity, I think all were required to do either opening or closing ceremonies in the chorus. So some, I think an orchestra of, string instruments possibly played at the opening ceremony, but the rest of us were in the chorus for that. So we learned the Olympic hymn, we learned the Greek national anthem because that's always sung, and we sang some other things. There was a ecumenical service about a week before the Olympics that a group of singers sang at also. And we sang a Christian hymn, a Muslim song, and some other things, different religious, Jewish, that was for athletes and volunteers. And so, but the award ceremonies were the big thing. So every third night, my band was assigned. And also we switched around. I actually went 4 times, or maybe 5 times out there. So more times than my band was assigned. I substituted for another bassoonist. And the first night we went, you know, it was dark, it's cold, we're sitting on the ice, out in the open, in chairs. And these are wind instruments. And when you blow through a wind instrument, your breath, which is moist, condenses if it's cold. And if it's really cold, it freezes. And sure enough, as the night went on, more and more of the instruments, especially the brass instruments and the flutes, which are all made of all metal, froze. So we didn't sound so great. The next night I went out, which was probably 3 nights later, they had put a band shell up around us, so at least we were protected from the wind, but it was still below freezing, and our instruments still froze. The next night I went out, they had put inside the band shell, they had put heaters. So here we are wondering, does heat penetrate below these heaters into the ice? Are we just going to slowly sink through the ice of the lake? Well, of course, the ice was probably 3 feet thick at this point, and the heat rises, and that was fine. But at that point, our instruments didn't freeze. It was warm enough, and we could play, and the subsequent nights. But I happened to be there for 4 of Eric Heiden's 5 gold medal ceremonies. So I played the U.S. national anthem 4 times for him, and some other times, and some other famous people. I don't remember, but you know, other countries we played national anthems for famous athletes who had won their gold medals, and it was just so stirring. It was just a wonderful thing. But the real culmination was that the closing ceremonies, for which I was in the choir, took place after the bronze medal hockey game in the hockey arena between Finland and Sweden, I believe it was. So the gold medal game had taken place the day before, and that was between the US and Russia. And of course, there's that movie, Miracle on Ice, I think it's called, about that, about the US hockey team beating Russia in the 1980 Winter Olympics. I've seen that movie pretty recently, and I can't speak to how accurate it is about the hockey, but in terms of what they depict about the Olympics, it rings true to me. But the medal ceremony for the hockey was going to be there in the hockey arena, which is also where the closing ceremonies were going to be right afterwards, right after the hockey game. So the hockey game ended, and then they had the Zambonis come out, and then they were assembling the platforms for the athletes to stand on for the closing ceremony. And in the meantime, the buses of Crane students had arrived already. And I think we even were in the arena moments after the hockey game ended in our reserved seats. Maybe even for the last seconds of the hockey game, we might have already been there in our reserved seats for the closing ceremonies. But the place was otherwise packed with fans, and fans were coming in for the medal ceremony and for the closing ceremonies. Fans meaning people, spectators. And because this was in the hockey arena, the band for it was not going to sit down. They were going to march in and stand to play the U.S. national anthem. It was the only national anthem that was going to be played because that was the last medal to be awarded, was hockey. Well, the band marched in. They weren't ready. The platforms weren't ready, but the crowd was going wild. with banners and flags and shouting USA, USA. And if you watch the movie, they have some footage of it, which is true. And I think this is also on YouTube. You can find this. And our band of my fellow musicians is down there, and they decided to play The Stars and Stripes Forever by John Philip Sousa. So they played that, and the crowd went wild with enthusiasm for that. More shouting, more cheering. The platforms were not ready, and so the band played that again, and the crowd went wild. And that band, I think, played it 4 times. Stars and Stripes Forever by John Philip Sousa, and the place was it was as loud as a Carolina Duke game, and probably not larger. It wasn't a huge arena, not as large as Olympic venues are now usually. Well, anyway, then the medal ceremony happened, and the U.S. was awarded the gold medal. I was there to see it. My classmates played the U.S. national anthem for that, and then the closing ceremonies and all of that. That's one of the events of my life, to have participated in those Olympics. And I was already interested in the Olympics, and that did not dim my interest. I watch the Olympics every time. I was wanting to talk about this last week, and I held off on it because I was looking for a certain memento that I have, which I can't find. I know it's here, though. I've seen it within the past year. I just can't remember where it is. So at some point in the future, I will show you. But right now, I'm going to put a picture in that I found on the internet. It's a pewter replica of the medals that were awarded to the athletes. So it's a pewter medal, if you will. And it was given to everybody who volunteered, who was a volunteer for the Olympics. So they made, thousands of them. And I received one, and it's one of my, I would say it's one of my prized possessions, except I don't know where it is. So maybe it's not my prized possession. But it's one of the objects that if I knew where it was, it would be something I would be happy to have and look at. So anyway, I'm going to put a picture that I'm snagging off the internet up here. And then the final thing, I know it's gone way over my usual 20 to 25 minutes. Sorry. Thanks for indulging me this long. I'm also going to I finished a quilt recently. The pattern is called Interlace by AOK Designs. It's a 5-yard quilt. You choose 5 fabrics according to their suggested scheme. And the quilting on it is a leafy meander, which I did free motion on our quilting machine, which I really like. I like how this turned out. Anyway, it's just something I've been working on recently in the quilting realm of my life. I have a lot of projects going, a lot. I really do. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have found something of interest in this video and all the usual stuff. So please subscribe. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or ideas or recollections of your own athletic prowess from the past. And ring the bell if you want to be notified. I record about once a week. It's not exactly on a particular schedule. If you subscribe and click the bell, then you'll be notified whenever I post a video. Thank you so much, and many blessings, friends.